What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another 10th edition stream. This time we are talking about the brand new Leviathan box set, specifically the chapter-approved mission cards. And boy, there are a lot of them. Missions are entirely new. They're quite different. Games Workshop has previewed quite a bit about them on the Warhammer community site. We're going to go through a little bit of that, but then we're going to go through every single card, all the deployment types, the mission rules, the missions themselves, and the secondaries.
Yeah, Games Workshop has successfully merged match play mission dynamics with the versatility of the Tempest of War mission deck, which not only brings variety to your games, but also gives you the power to have control over kind of like how to build your army or how to play the missions, and gives you the best of both worlds. So I'm really excited to check that out.
Yeah, I'm excited to get, just see what these are actually like, because we've been playing with that 9th edition style for so long. It becomes ingrained. You become, you start loving it. My one concern about the 9th edition ones was those faction secondaries and the imbalance between them. It looks like we're going to right at least that wrong here today.
I love it. It's great. And it's like there's a couple of little nuances if you're a fan of the 9th edition mission format. Some of them will seem similar, but they're not the same. And little changes like that are going to be very important to know so you can really play the game and do your best.
Absolutely. So a lot of the names you're going to be familiar with, but there's a new take on them. So if you like this type of content, yesterday we released a how to play video about the fundamentals of the new edition and the core rules, and a variety of other videos about the core rules in the War Room. We're going to have even more advanced videos focusing on all the shenanigans you can do in movement and the charge phase.
Lots of tips.
Tons of 10-minute tips. Those are going to be coming up soon. So if you're looking for that traditional strategy sessions and 10-minute tips from the War Room content, don't worry, it's coming. We've got you covered. But if you want to check out the videos we've released thus far, please check out the War Room. It's thewarroom.vhx.tv. In the description below, there's a 3-day free trial to test it out, and there's going to be tons of amazing content coming out very soon. If you like this type of content, if you like our videos on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about it, give us a like. All of that is massively important for us, and we really do very much appreciate it. Leave us a comment at the end of the video telling us what you think about the mission deck and 10th edition in general.
Yeah. What's your favorite mission? And what mission do you hope you never play?
there might be a couple looking at these cards. So
let's just say there's some crazy ones, which I'm excited.
There's a couple wild ones. So you thought like abandoned sanctuaries were difficult.
Yeah.
Get ready for this.
Get ready for this.
Yeah. Okay. So starting, if you haven't checked out, Warhammer Community has like a basic breakdown of the mission rules and some of the things. Same thing as before. Deployment. You got your mission rule. Then there's a primary mission. So you draw your primary, you draw a mission rule, and then on top of that, you're going to either choose fixed secondaries, in which you have 2 that are fixed and can score you up to 20 points each, and then you can do instead tactical missions, which is the drawing of the cards, and you draw up to 2, and you can decide at the end of the turn if you want to discard any of those. And if you do, you gain a CP. So if there's a difficult one you can't score, it's totally fine. You get a CP out of it, and it's not the end of the world.
Which is awesome, because you can build a list like we're used to in the GT mission packs for 9th edition that can do 2 of the secondaries within the deck, and we'll kind of explain which those secondaries are very well, or you can build a very flexible list that can do everything and draw the cards and kind of see what the cards draw. Yep. As for format, primary mission, deployment, and mission special rule, once you put them together, you essentially build your own GT mission, but it just varies from time to time. I can see events sort of like potentially picking the ones you're going to play round to round, things like that.
When we dive into the cards, you're going to see that there's probably some combos that make the tactical missions even more flexible and enjoyable, so they might become standard in tournament play. We'll have to wait and see. And then finally, after those secondaries, there's Gambits, and we'll break down Gambits in a little bit, but they're kind of wild.
Yeah, absolutely wild.
And speaking of wild, we have Mr. John McCardell in the chat, being an absolute hero of the Art of War channel, gifting 50 different memberships. If you were one of the lucky people who was just gifted a sub, please do make sure I think you get a notification. You have to accept it. So make sure you do accept it, and then you can see some lovely War Room content available.
It went up, all with the new edition. Very exciting.
Thank you so much, Mr. John McCardell. You are a hero, and thank you so much just every single time. Okay, so Scary, let's go ahead and
dive in.
Yeah, I think let's just dive into the actual cards here because the article is pretty generic.
Yeah, so technically they're called Leviathan games, right?
Yes,
and
the Leviathan chapter approved.
The Leviathan chapter approved games. Of course, the story is we're in the middle of the Fourth Tyrannic War, right?
I'm going to trust you on that.
Yep. I read the italics when it comes to... I read the italics on the stratagems. So the card deck basically comes in this little set here. It's like a little set of cards, right?
It's cool. Like it's a nice set. You can actually get a bunch of objective markers,
Yep.
Or you could use the cool neoprene ones.
Comes in the Leviathan box set. So it is included in the Leviathan box set, so you can kind of play stuff with that. Of course, thank you, Games Workshop, for sending us a set to review and doing all that stuff as well. But you can see here, it comes with a little pamphlet, and essentially in the pamphlet it just tells you exactly how to set up a mission. So you build your armies. The rules for building your armies, how to set that up, is just built into the main rule book.
Yep.
The main thing is you have to have a character, and you can't take more than 3 of any other unit, unless it's battle line or dedicated transport, where you can have 6. That's it. It's very straightforward, very simple.
Very flexible.
Pick your detachment rule, pick your faction, that's it, right? Then you determine a mission. So you split the cards into the different decks, and you've got the deployment decks, which are those. You've got your primary ones. So say we were playing, Richard would randomly select one of the deployments.
Yep. I'll just pick something like Search and Destroy.
Cool.
We'll show you the cards specifically.
Yeah, we'll randomly select the primary, say Vital Grounds, and then we get Chilling Reign, which is the one where you have no mission rules.
Tournament standard, maybe.
No special things ever. Then you, of course, read the mission, etc., and you go into different things, like placing objective markers, which is a great way to kind of get to the deployments.
Yep. The one thing to note about our lovely little packet here is that the turn 1 deep strikes, which are not in the core rules, in the core rules you can just come in turn 1 from reserves. It is in here. I will find the exact part, and there it is. Okay, so if I just put that right there, you can go ahead and see towards right in that area.
Yeah, reserves units cannot arrive during the first battle round.
So there was like a bit of panic when we read the core rules. I'm like, oh no, not the turn 1 deep strikes again. And it's luckily in the chapter proof set, which is going to be match play. It is there. It's going to be totally fine. We can all calm down.
Yes. Yes. Unless, there might be stuff that allows you, historically things like drop pods and stuff have allowed.
There probably are some exceptions, but it's not your army can just come in and just obliterate somebody.
Terrifying.
I'll take that.
Yeah. So you have 5 different deployment types. The ones you know and love. Search and Destroy, good old table quarters. Now, something you'll notice is the objectives are preset based on the deployment type. So you've got that one. You've got the good traditional Dawn of War, right? Which, talking about abandoned sanctuaries, that's literally abandoned sanctuaries.
Yep, it is abandoned sanctuaries with not those horrible special rules.
Correct. Sweeping Engagement, which is essentially half to corner.
It's
right?
like a corner Dawn of War, which is brand new.
This one's brand new, and it sort of replaces the old Vital Intelligence in a way. Like instead of having to measure weird distance down here and here, they've said no, just half to half. It just keeps it simple, so you're not measuring, is it 15 or is it 18 inches or 12? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And all the objectives are offset. So there's usually 3 objectives in No Man's Land and 1 objective in each player's deployment zone.
Very much fighting over the center in these ones.
Yep. Then we've got the Crucible Battle, which we do know from missions like bombs or move objectives around. Also offset on the objectives. And last but not least, classic
Hammer and Anvil.
Hammer and Anvil.
And it's a return to what was it? Shoot, I'm forgetting what it was called in Knackment, but it was one of my favorite missions, and everybody else hated it. But man, my AdMech won a lot of games on that mission.
Was that
this exact style?
Yeah, was it?
I can't remember the name of it.
Was it the one that turned into the Scouring?
Kind of.
Yeah.
But I'll remember it. I'll remember it later. But overall, a good set of missions here. A solid amount of deployment styles. Obviously, Dawn of War is always a little iffy. I think that's usually the worst deployment style. So I'm glad that they've introduced another new one to make that less prevalent.
Well, I will say
There's not
that,
multiple Dawn of Wars here that you have to worry about.
no, it's one Dawn of War mission. That is one of every 5. So if you go to like a 5-round tournament, you know, you're likely going to play each deployment style once, I would assume. And if you're going to be going to like a big GT with like 9 to 10 rounds or whatever, you potentially play either of them twice. Now, Dawn of War does sort of favor like aggro armies that can get into your face really fast, so we'll see how that develops as we learn more about the factions.
Definitely.
However, the missions make it really interesting.
And there's actually quite a lot of them.
There are 9 different missions, primary missions. Some of them are very traditional, like take and hold. Very traditional. So at the end of each player's command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 5 points for each objective marker they control, up to a maximum of 15. That's not hold 1, hold 2, hold more. It's just hold each for 5 points.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just stock standard, basically.
They also continue to add in the player who goes second scores at the end of their 5th turn instead of like at the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's in most of the missions. I think there might be a couple where it's not that way.
Yeah.
But the one thing to note as well is that primary is now 50 of your total points, secondaries are 40, and then you still have 10 for your paint score. So a bit of more emphasis on primary, and people are asking what the back of the cards look like. Most of the mission stuff, like deployments, has a different symbol but is bluish, and then both players...
So the symbol different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So both players have there's a red set for the attacker and a green set for the defender.
Yeah, the cards are essentially the same, but it does help if you have something else to like if you really need to know who attacker or defender is for, I don't know, scoring or something like that. Scorched Earth. So this one is one of the weirder ones. From the second battle round in each player's shooting phase, the player whose turn it is can select a unit from their army that is not battle shocked and is eligible to shoot.
So it's the new form of actions. It's no more action as a...
It's not called an action.
Yeah, it's not called an action. It's basically, are you eligible to shoot, and you give that up.
Correct, which is interesting because any unit that is eligible to shoot can do it. Like if you advance and have, say, assault weapons, or if you fall back and, say, used a stratagem that allowed you to shoot and made you eligible to fall back and do stuff, which makes it more flexible than it was.
100%. It also isn't restricted to infantry.
Correct.
Like a lot of them were.
Yeah, that is true. So you can use more units in your army. Until the end of that turn, that unit can't shoot or charge. Right? So pretty straightforward. At the start of the controlling player's next command phase, if that unit is within 1 inch of an objective marker that player controls, that objective marker is burned and removed from the battlefield.
Yikes. They had this early on in 9th edition.
I do remember that.
Scorched Earth.
It's
it was the one that nobody wanted to play.
No, because it was like a win more almost. Like you had to go up one flank and try and burn their objectives in their deployment zone or whatever it was. I remember that mission. At the end of each player's command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 5 points for each objective they control to a max of 10 per turn, so not 15 here. Mm-hmm. The player who has seconds, you score it the same, but each player scores 5 points at the end of the battle if 1 or more objective markers in no man's land were burned by a unit from their army, and 10 if the objective marker in their opponent's deployment zone was burned.
So that's how you get to your 50.
Yes.
Is if you get aggressive on their objectives.
You
and
have
are able
to
to burn
them.
So probably not a mission where people are going to max primary that easily.
Yep.
But certainly one of the more wild
ones. If I can't have it, you can't either. It'd be really cool to have like a really like tanky unit that could go into the middle and just burn the objectives.
Yeah, just start burning everything.
Just force your opponent to not score like any primary points.
Yeah.
That would be terrible. Okay, Purge the Foe is the third one. So this one is at the end of each player's command phase. The player whose turn it is scores 4 points if they control 1 or more objective markers, and 4 additional points if they control more. So it's just hold 1, hold more for 4 points each. Mm-hmm. It's crazy how like they're different. The amount of points you're scoring is different. Like how you score is different.
The cap is often different.
Yeah, you still try and get that 50, which is a big threshold for primary, but you don't know like 8 points a turn in this case, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like 15.
If you start falling behind very far in primary, it's tough.
So same thing with the 5th battle round, but in every battle round, at the end of the battle round, each player scores 4 victory points if 1 or more enemy units were destroyed that battle round, and an extra 4 victory points if 1 or more enemy units, then friendly units, were destroyed that battle round.
So kill more.
Yeah. So that's like an old ITC version
Very
of
much
the
so.
rule.
Yeah, we're back in 8th edition when ITC had the main tournament format. It was hold more, kill more. Mm-hmm. So kind of reminiscent of that.
I think that's really cool. It also means that if you're playing like an MSU army that can like score lots of, say, tactical objectives and be all over the table, an army that's more tanky in that sort of mission can have a clear advantage.
An army of like in 9th edition we had all these Dark Angel Terminators where you're not really getting through a brick.
Filth.
Exactly. So that would be a great army to play on this type of mission.
That is awesome. Okay, Sites of Power. Now this is an interesting one. Only the objectives in No Man's Land are scored in this mission for primary points. No, sorry, that's a lie.
I think it's with character.
It's a lie. It's every objective in No Man's Land that has a character on it when you score it is worth double points. So you get 3 points for each objective you control, 6 points if it has a character on it.
Yep.
Up to a maximum of 15 per turn as well.
So like this mission really incentivizes having a lot of characters all over the place that you can throw onto an objective and hopefully they survive and just keep netting you all this extra points. So you could like try and front load your primary scoring, throwing away your characters but not carrying in a late game because you max out primary.
Well, some players might only want to take their single character they need to take for their army build.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
even like 2 or 3. Like that's still not, you don't want to be throwing that away.
But at the same time, your build might have had characters that are all like backline support characters and you don't really want to send them into the midboard.
Exactly.
Which is like that, you have to make that decision. Are you willing to throw them away to get points or put them in harm's way, which I think is really cool.
Yep.
That's straightforward for that one. Then we have the Ritual. Do you want to go over this one? This is a bit of a weird one.
This is a little crazy. I'm going to actually just read it and then I'll put it back.
Yep.
So, when setting up on the battlefield, you remove all objectives in No Man's Land except for the one closest to the center of the battlefield. Already getting crazy. So, as you saw, most of the missions have 3 objectives in the middle of the table or in No Man's Land. So, you're pulling the 2 that are on the sides, leaving the one in the center. Well, how do you get them back? Well, here it is. In each player's shooting phase, the player whose turn it is can select one unit from the army that's not battle-shocked and eligible to shoot, and until the end of the turn, that unit can't shoot or declare a charge, basically doing a modern action. At the end of the turn, the players whose turn it is can set up one objective marker wholly within No Man's Land and within 1 inch of that unit, provided it can be set up exactly 9 inches from one other objective marker and not within 6 of any other one. So the first one has to go wholly within 9 of the center one, and then from there you can start stringing them out to the side and keep adding objectives. There's no limit on here, so it's literally the limit of you can't be within 6 of another one.
Yeah.
There's no board edge qualifier on here.
No.
So you could just start...
You just need to basically sacrifice a unit to create an objective out of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So quite a wild one. At the end of each command phase, the players whose turn it is scores 5 points for each objective marker in No Man's Land that they control, so their home objective is irrelevant.
It's worth nothing. Like, not for primary. You just, like, your home objective doesn't give you any points.
So check that out again.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I feel like, you know, in playing I play a lot of Age of Sigmar, and a lot of the missions tend to, like, skew a little bit one way or another for list building. So I feel like this style means that like there's certain armies that will be good at some missions and some won't, but in and of itself, it creates a bit of a like balancing system.
Yeah, if your army isn't good at a particular mission, maybe you add extra text choices to make sure you are good. In addition, we're going to have to find out if, like, a 9-round tournament, are they going to do one of every mission, or are they going to double up some of these?
Or are they going to just decide as a community that some are too crazy for GT mission play because they're so esoteric?
Or maybe they're just going to be like, every game on the Ritual. Let's go.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
Start placing your objectives.
Okay, so the next mission that we have is Priority Targets. So at the end of each player's command phase, the player whose turn it is scores 5 points for each marker they control, up to a max of 10 points. Mm-hmm. Now that one that's in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th battle rounds, and there's no caveat in this one for the person who's going second.
getting bottom of the turn.
Correct.
Primary.
However, at the end of the battle, each player scores 15 points for each marker they control to a max of 15, which gives you a powerful endgame scoring mission as well.
Yeah.
Kind of like the old Eldar. You know, they'd go around and they'd, like hop onto all the objectives at the end of the game.
Well, I like doing that with Tau too. So
Exactly.
Like any
you
of those
table
armies,
people for 4 turns and then jump onto the objectives.
and then you score a lot of points end of game. So like I'm a fan of that one.
Yes, you are. Then we have supply drop. Now this is another one of the weird ones, because in this one you have at the start of the battle you randomly select 2 of the objectives in No Man's Land.
Okay.
And those objectives are going to be the Alpha and then the Omega objective, right? So at the start of the 4th battle round, the objective that was determined the Alpha, so one of the 3 objectives in No Man's Land, gets removed from the table.
How can you remove the Alpha? Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
It's the first one to get removed. You have to go for the Alpha to be the Alpha. Is that
Become the Alpha.
Yeah.
10th edition 40k, become the Alpha.
Hashtag that. And then in the 5th battle round, all objective markers in No Man's Land, apart from the Omega objective, are also removed. So at the end of the game, there is 1 objective
The Omega.
in No Man's Land. The last objective, the Omega.
So how does the scoring work on this?
So the scoring works at the end of each command phase. The player whose turn it is scores 5 points for each objective marker they control in No Man's Land. Once again, your home objective has nothing to do with the primary scoring.
Wow, definitely emphasizing just fighting over the center with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, definitely interesting. At the end of each player's command phase in the 4th battle round, the player whose turn it is scores 8 points for each marker they control in No Man's Land. So once the Alpha objective is removed, all the other objectives are worth more. And in the 5th battle round, the person who has first turn scores 15 points if they score the Omega objective. And at the end of the game, the person who went second scores 15 points if they control the Omega.
So a lot of points in that later part of the game, being able to control the objectives that remain. So yeah, imagine the one that you threat overload onto disappears.
Well, you'd know which one it is.
Oh, yeah, you do
but
know
at the
which
same
one's the
time, you'd
Alpha.
be like,
Yeah.
I need to like control this early and then push into this one, or the middle one's gonna disappear, and the Omega is like the one on the one side. And you're like, well, we're fighting over this one here as much as possible. So it's interesting. Or when we get to the mission special rules, there is a mission special rule where you add a 6th objective and it goes into No Man's Land.
Yeah.
So then you'd have 4 in No Man's Land. That would just be chaos.
It will be. But very wild mission.
And then talking about
nothing
wild
like-
missions.
Deploy servo skulls.
Oh yeah, this one is. I believe you saw Nick and Ganyo play this one on the Warhammer stream.
Was that last night? Yeah.
Where they played the servo skull mission.
Craft Worlds versus Astra Militarum.
If you did watch that game, it was really cool to see them both play. But this mission, essentially, once again, only the objectives in No Man's Land are scoreable. And you can control them and move them at the end of a player turn 6 inches in any direction.
Towards me.
Yeah, or toward, wherever you want. And you score points for how close they are to the opponent's deployment zone. Starting on the 2nd turn, you basically score 2 points for each skull that's within 12 inches of the opponent's deployment zone, 5 points for each skull that's within 6 inches of their opponent's deployment zone, and 8 points for each skull that's within their opponent's deployment zone. And these are all cumulative. So 1 skull inside your opponent's deployment zone would be 15 points.
Well, I'm going to try and put my servo skull in your deployment zone.
Please do. Get lots of points.
Yeah.
But that does mean that, once again, it sort of forces you to fight over that middle. I don't know. I'm noticing a trend here.
And you have to have the units that want to do this type of stuff.
Well, as a Astra Militarum player, I would be scared to play this mission against, like, World Eaters.
They're running at you with objectives in tow.
We don't need to hold back. Go forward. And last but not least, Vital Ground. So if you draw this and the Hidden Supplies mission rule, which is the extra objective, discard this card and draw a new primary mission. So you cannot play this mission with the 6 objectives. So at the end of each player's... after setting up the battlefield, remove the objective marker in No Man's Land that is closest to the center of the battlefield. So take away the objective
Another
marker
one
in the
where you're
middle.
just messing with objectives.
If at the end of each player's command phase, the player whose turn it is scores victory points as follows. If they control the objective marker in their own deployment zone, 2 points.
Not much.
If they control, for each objective marker in no man's land they control, 5 points. If they control the objective marker in their opponent's deployment zone, 6 points.
6 points. I feel like that should be bigger money. That should be like 8 points.
Yeah, and then 5th battle round, end of turn, the person who goes second scores all those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it should be 8. Like, if you're going all the way to
In their
opponent's
deployment zone, 1 extra point?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's like a win more.
it's a
at
win.
that
It's
point.
definitely a win more.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
That's interesting, though.
Let's go ahead. Why don't you just start into these mission roles here? So there's quite a few of them. I believe 12 different mission roles. And we already previewed that first one, which was Chilling Rain.
Yep.
And that could become a tournament staple here with no additional mission roll.
Yeah, either that or the one that gets removed the most often.
Yep.
Because there's nothing. Like,
It just becomes
it just
Chilling
does
Rain.
nothing.
Yeah, because there's
You know what I
12 of them, so some of them are just not going to be played if it's...
I could see this one actually not being used.
It
because
also
it doesn't do anything.
It also might be that events will align certain mission roles directly with a specific mission to help balance it out. Or...
I could see that. Of course, over time, like the more we play these missions, the more we're going to find out like which ones mesh well together. It'll be cool to see what tournament organizers do.
Yep, exactly. We're looking at you, WTC.
That's
Tell
right.
us what you're going to do.
Mike.
So sweep and clear in this mission, if a player controls an objective marker at the end of their command phase, that objective marker remains under their control even if they have no models in range of it, unless their opponent controls it at the end of any subsequent command phase.
So sticky objectives for everyone?
Sticky objectives for everyone. Sweep and clear.
Now, based on the Games Workshop previews, they gave sticky objectives to a lot of factions in different ways. Like on the faction reviews.
Because it wasn't that common in 9th edition.
Space Marines had it.
So if it's more, like...
And the 2 missions had it.
Yep, that's right.
And that was like pretty much it. Other than like maybe one
And the missions that had it, it was only for your troop units, like your objectives.
OBSEC stuff, yeah.
So, interesting. We'll see. Mission rule, Hidden Supplies. In this mission, players must set up 1 additional objective marker in No Man's Land. This is the one that Scary was mentioning. Unless the chosen battlefield mission rule is also in effect, before setting up this new objective marker, players must first move the objective marker in the center of the battlefield 6 inches directly towards one of the corners of the battlefield. And then players then set up the new objective marker 6 inches from the center towards the diagonally opposite side. So you basically have 2 in the center and then probably 2 on the outskirts now.
But which corner of the battlefield?
Which corner of the battlefield?
Yeah. I don't think it says, right?
No, it doesn't. You move it in one way and then you put it on the opposite side.
So who decides which corner? The one towards the deployment, towards the edges? Like
it doesn't say. It just says players.
Okay, so I guess you just kind of decide as you go.
Because it's going to create an equal thing. Because you move one of them one way and the other one.
I guess depending on terrain, you could be like, hey, let's put it this way or that way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
If terrain is unequal, if it's a table where there isn't balance between the 2 halves of it, then yeah, it could make more of a difference.
Yeah.
All right, so minefields. In this mission, each time an advance roll of 6 is made for a unit, the unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
Sure. Like
the fast ones take mortals.
You're trying to, especially if you have like a rule that potentially says you auto run 6 or something, like every time
Does it say you have to roll? Each time an advance roll of a 6 is made.
But sometimes it says your advance roll counts as a 6 or whatever.
But it does say a roll there.
Oh, so
usually
you have to
for those you don't
roll. Yeah, you're right, because the jet bikes was just, it's 8.
We don't know how the technical term
I'm
is
talking in 9th edition.
Yeah,
like
9th.
Reva jet bikes, it was, you just don't roll.
Exactly, and sometimes it's just add to your move characteristic.
That is also true. But at the end of the day, you have a guy with 1 wound left, and they're trying to get onto an objective, and you're like, I'm going to advance it.
Hilarious.
And he like rolls a 6 and blows up.
This shouldn't be too impactful, but like the one time that it is, it'll be hilarious.
To be honest, this is the kind of rule you'll forget the entire game. Like, you'll just won't remember to play this rule.
Okay, Targets of Opportunity is a long one. Scar, you take this one.
In this mission,
literally is 3 paragraphs.
look at that. It's just words everywhere. Should I start with the italics? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
In this mission, if a player is using tactical missions, then each time that player determines...
And tactical missions is the drawing of the cards. whereas fixed is holding your 2.
Like, we'll get to that and how that works. But yes, the tactical missions is you drawing your missions, basically. If they have fewer than 3 active secondary mission cards, so active means ones you have in your hand, basically, you draw until you have 3 cards. In this mission, if a player is using fixed missions, then in addition, that's the secondaries.
That's the static. I pick 2, and I just can score up to 20 of each.
For that whole game.
Yep.
Then you also draw cards from your secondary mission deck during the battle. So basically you have your 2 tactical, and then you get your 2 fixed. You get your 1 tactical you can score. So it's in addition to your fixed, which is actually really interesting.
Yeah. I like how they named 1 tactical, and it's confusing because it's all all the cards require tactics.
That's
but
correct.
Yeah, fixed is picking 2, and each one is worth up to 20, and they're the whole game.
At the end of the select secondary mission step, that player should retrieve their secondary mission deck, remove all the fixed mission cards that you did not select at the start of that step, then shuffle the remaining cards.
Gotcha.
So basically, if you pick, there you have like a little symbol, which we'll get to.
Yep.
So if you do get this mission rule and you took fixed, you have to take out all the other cards that could have been fixed from your deck.
And what is it, like 7, 8, or 9?
There's like 8, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, 8 or 7.
Out of 16.
Yeah, then at the start of each player's command phase, if you have fewer than 3 active missions, you draw until you have 3 missions. So you draw basically 1 tactical card.
Yeah.
And you can spend the CP to redraw it if you wish.
This is one of the ones that I think could become a tournament staple of
Yep.
making the deck more flexible for players by allowing you to pick 2 good fixed ones that your army does, and then you can get additional points from 1 random Maelstrom tactical one.
Yeah.
So this is the one that one of the ones that stood out where this probably will be seen, in my opinion.
I like that one.
All right, we got Scrambler Fields next. In this mission, players' units with the Infiltrator ability can't be set up within range of an objective marker that is either in no man's land or their opponent's deployment zone. And the same thing applies for units with Scout, any units that can redeploy, and any units that come in from reserves or strategic reserves. You can't come in within your opponent's deployment zone or on an objective in no man's land. So just making it so you can't easily come down and like sticky an objective or all
Sort of like it's like a light abandoned sanctuaries.
Yep.
You know what I mean, in a way.
So that is Scrambler Fields. Instead of reading literally all the bullet points, I just summarized them.
Yep.
All right, next up is Delayed Reserves. I can kind of sense where this is going. In this mission, until the start of the 3rd battle round, which is when reserves have to come in, each time a reserves or strategic reserves unit wishes to arrive on the battlefield, the controlling player must make a reserves roll, and on a 3-up, you can come in. So if you roll a 1 or a 2, you can't bring that unit in. So if you're like
need them.
If you have key units that are starting in reserves, and all of a sudden you just happen to roll a 1 or a 2 on turn 2, that's.
I wonder how this would work with rapid insertion.
It's arriving from reserves, right?
So do you have to spend the CP and then I guess you'd have to roll it.
Yeah.
You'd spend the CP and then
you'd have to
maybe
roll.
you couldn't bring it in. See, I could see that impacting some strategies that come
could
with
be.
that as well. Interesting.
Rapid ingress, right?
Is that the one?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
That's the generic stratagem to come in at the end of your opponent's movement phase.
Yes.
Check out the core rules video we did yesterday. Chosen Battlefield is the next one here. In this mission, objective markers are not placed as shown on the deployment card drawn. Instead, players roll off at the start of the place objective marker step and then alternate setting up objective markers one at a time, starting with the winner of the roll-off. This is player-placed objectives for the first time in the Games Workshop format.
I love it. Well, Maelstrom, Tempest of War missions.
I never played any.
They had that already.
Matched play.
That's right. It wasn't in match play, but I mean that was based. So it's
they're
cool that
taking
they're
ideas
bringing
from
it in from that. And back if you played 7th edition and all the old editions, player placed objectives was part of the tournament experience. Was trying to make sure you knew to either make the objectives all close or make them far away, depending on what your army was doing.
Definitely, and there's a skill to that.
Yeah, it's cool that they're bringing that back in a way.
So, but only for this mission rule. But once again, this is one of the ones that stands out as it could become more common.
Yeah.
Then where they're set up is one objective marker must be placed wholly within each deployment zone, and the remaining objective markers must be placed wholly within no man's land. Objective markers must be placed more than 6 from any battlefield edge and 9 away from other objectives. And then if any rules require players to set up additional objective markers like hidden supplies, which we went over, then players set them up as described on the mission rule card.
Makes sense.
Cool. So that is the chosen battlefield. Then we have Maelstrom of Battle. This is another one that stands out. In this mission, shuffle the remaining mission rule cards together before drawing 2 new mission rule cards. If either of these new mission rule cards is Chilling Reign, the one that does nothing, discard that mission rule card and draw 2 additional ones for a total of 3, and you apply all. So maybe some tournaments, especially the more casual like GTs and RTTs, I could see this being as a fun thing where you just have some cool missions.
Kind of throws a wrench in it. You mean like, you know what? Nobody can bring in reserves and it's a minefield, or move your objectives around and whatever. It's cool.
But it could also be a way to get 2 of the good ones, 2 of these good mission roles that I think are competitively minded. As standard in a lot of missions.
I like that.
Then we've got supply lines. In this mission, if a player controls the objective marker in their own deployment zone at the start of their command phase, they roll a d6. On a 4-up, you gain a command point. So, nice way to gain for armies that probably don't have CP regen.
Yeah.
This will be a great way to do it.
Well, in the core rules, you can only ever gain an additional command point from any source. Now, in this mission rule, if you're playing with the tactical mission cards, if you discard one of your cards at the end of the turn, you get a command point as well. So this would mean that you just have a chance at always getting that command point, regardless of whether or not you scored your cards, you didn't, or
maybe you want to score all your cards this turn instead of discarding one. So you'll go for the points, and then maybe you got the additional one.
Yep.
All right, there's only 2 more mission rules left. We've got Secret Intel in this mission. In each player's command phase, the first time that player draws secondary mission cards that phase, the player can draw 1 additional card and then discard one of their active ones. I really like this one. I think it might become a tournament staple.
Especially if you're playing with the tactical. It doesn't really help anything with fixed.
No.
However, it gives person who's playing tactical more of a...
reliability.
Correct. You can be like, no, I need this one or that one or this card.
I drew 2 difficult ones, and you'll see when we get to the secondaries in just a minute. In this mission, the last one is called Vox Static. In this mission, the Command Reroll Stratagem and New Order Stratagem both cost 2 CP. So Command Point Reroll, you've already seen that in the core rules. New Orders is something that is just here. And that is a 1 CP strat for the end of your command phase. One of your active secondary mission cards, you discard it and draw a new one. So this is one of the other ways to kind of refresh your...
You can do it once per game, though, only. So, like, if you better think very
long and hard
about whether or not it's worth having to get rid of that one of those cards, for sure. Very, honestly, I like it. So far, very different. There's a lot of, like, cool, as a competitive player, I'm really excited about having to build lists that, like, take into account a lot of these
different
rules.
Things. Yeah, it's not just here's what my army does well, here's what the meta is also I'm going to be facing.
Yeah.
Also, I have to think about the missions and the unique aspects of them. Like that character one, that's definitely going to be built into your lists.
Yeah, you need to have something that can get or when you deploy even, like you're going to have to deploy differently so you can take advantage of those things and whatnot. So definitely very, very important as well.
Cool.
Now there are 16 secondaries.
Yep. Both players have the same exact deck, and like we said, some of them are fixed. Let's honestly just go through the fixed ones, which Scary is doing right now, first, and then we'll go through the ones that are not fixed. And for fixed, like I said, you can pick 2 of the ones that can be fixed, and those are your secondaries for the entire game, and you can score them turn by turn.
7 of them.
Up to 20 points per secondary for fixed.
Yeah.
But one thing to note about these secondary cards is that most of them score less points if you're fixed and score additional points if you are tactical, which is drawing the cards.
Yeah, but it does mean you can build a list based around doing these, right? Yep. So, that's up to you in your list building thing, or, get your coach to, like, help you build a list that, like, reflects what you want to achieve on the table, right?
Yep.
Which is
We're going to do Gambits next. Don't worry, guys.
Yes, yeah.
We're going to do the Gambits after this.
Probably one of the craziest parts of the new mission set, the Gambits. So you will know it's a fixed mission by this little symbol that's down here. It's like a little page, basically. Yep. Behind enemy lines, a classic of the match play scene, especially if you played elves of pretty much any
Fast
sort.
armies.
Yep.
Fast reserve heavy armies.
Correct. At the end of any turn, if 2 or more units from your army, excluding aircraft, so that still made it into this edition, that are wholly within your opponent's deployment zone, this secondary mission is achieved and you score 4 points. If at the end of your turn, only one unit from your army is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone, then you still achieve it, but you get 2 points. So still 2 points or 4 points.
Yep. And like we said, you're thinking about these secondaries is if I pick it fixed, up to 20 points for the entire game I can score on it.
Now, if you're using tactical missions, then when you do it, you get an additional victory point for max of 5. So it'd be 5 for 2 or 3 for 1. But then again, you just get it for 1 turn, and then you discard it. So it is worth more, but, it's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Assassination kind of goes without saying what this does. Kill characters.
It shouldn't be kill characters, right?
If you're using fixed missions, then while the secondary is active, each time you kill a character model, you score 4 victory points. If you're using tactical missions, then at the end of the turn, if either of these 2 conditions are met, you get 5 victory points. Either you kill a single character in that turn when you draw the card, or all characters from your opponent's army have already been destroyed. Then you also score it.
Yep.
As well. Note that if you're using tactical missions, this mission is achieved even if such a unit was destroyed and then subsequently resurrected for any reason. Thinking about you.
At least they made it clear on the card, too. This doesn't require rare rules or FAQ.
Yeah,
they
it's
just
great.
make it clear.
So clear. Now, I really, really like that there's no cap on this if you're playing it fixed. So, like, if you all of a sudden your opponent had a bunch of characters and you can just kill them all in one turn, you just get 4 for each one.
Yeah,
There's no
up
cap.
to 20.
Up to 20 points, which is really, really cool. Bring it down for the same thing, but for monsters or vehicles. This one's a little different than what we're used to. So you get 2 points for each monster or vehicle you kill, and you get a bonus point if they have 10 or more wounds. You get an additional bonus point if they have 15 or more wounds, and you get an additional bonus point if they have 20 or more wounds.
Okay, so it starts adding up.
That's right. If you're using it as a tactical mission, you score an extra 1 VP. However, if you're using tactical, you cannot score more than 8 from this.
Capped on 8, yeah.
But if you're playing fixed, there's no cap. But you don't get the bonus.
Yep,
points.
the cap is just fixed as 20.
Correct. Engage on all fronts. Very classic. At the end of your turn, if you have one or more qualifying units from your army wholly within 3 or more different table quarters, and more than 3 inches away from every other table quarter, you achieve this mission. Anything that is battle shocked is not a qualifying unit, but that's the only stipulation. Anything else is a qualifying unit. Even aircraft, which, sure. You get 4 points too, and if you're drawing it as tactical, then you get an additional VP to a max of 5.
Yep, and that's why I mentioned at the beginning, it's very common for you to get slightly extra for playing tactical.
Okay, Storm Hostile Objective. This is very similar to what Shock Tactics was for Space Marines in 9th edition, except you can pick it for any faction. If you control one or more objective markers that were controlled by your opponent at the start of your turn, you get 4 points if you're doing fixed, and 5 points if you're doing tactical missions. And if your opponent did not control any objective markers at the start of your turn, and you control one or more markers that you did not control, so there's no more I'm just not going to go onto objectives so you can't score your points. Yeah. It's you can just take an objective you just didn't have, basically. And that's it. You cannot do this on the first battle round. If you're, you can only do it on the second battle round onwards. Even if it's fixed, though, which is kind of sad. Yeah. Cleanse. Do an action. I'm going to abbreviate this. Do an action with a unit, the new action, that's not battle shocked. Right? On one or more objectives that are not within your deployment zone. You get 2 points for one objective. You get 4 points for 2 objectives. Just do an action on missions. Get bonus points if you're doing fixed tactical. And last but not least, deploy Teleport Homer. 1 unit from your army that's not battle shocked that can shoot. You can do it if you're within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield, or if you're wholly within your opponent's deployment zone.
And then there's different points based on where you are.
No, just within. It doesn't have to be wholly within. Just within your opponent's deployment zone. But it's 2 points if you do it in the middle of the battlefield if you're fixed, or 3 if you're using tactical, and 4 if you're using fixed in your opponent's deployment zone, or 5 if it's tactical.
Yep.
But being 1, it means that you could score 2 points a turn just by doing it in the middle of the board every time.
Exactly. It
Right?
means that it's not all or nothing, where are you going to be able to get into your opponent's deployment zone? If you can't, you'll never take it. Then now there is a reason to potentially take it. Even if you can't get there, 3 out of the 5 turns, you can only get there 2. You can still do the center the other turns.
Yeah.
I like that flexibility.
I do like it. And there's a lot of missions, even in the tactical ones, that give you that option of, like, if you can't do it or your opponent doesn't have the units anymore, like, there's a way that you can get some points, right?
Yep. So these are the ones that are can be potentially selected as fixed. So you'd pick 2 of those, and they would be active for the entire game, up to 20 points for each of them.
Yep.
Okay, for a total of 40 secondary points. Now I'm going to go through the ones that are not fixed, that are going to be in the tactical deck. So first one is investigate signals. You can do an action, and we're going to abbreviate that. If you want to know what that means, just go back a little bit. But we're just going to simplify the language to do an action. At the end of your turn, each corner of the battlefield that has 1 or more of these selected units, wholly within 9 of its of one of these corners, is scanned by your army. If 1 or more corners are scanned, then you score 2 points for each corner. So basically, if you have all 4 corners with a unit wholly within 9 of all of them that doesn't shoot, isn't battle shocked, etc., then you could potentially get up to 8 points on this.
You can do this with aircraft too.
Yep, it's literally any type of unit. There's no infantry, no biker qualifier, no objective secure, nothing like that. It is just select a unit that is eligible to shoot, and it can't shoot or charge that turn.
Yeah.
And then you get to do this. So as long as you have cheap resources or resources that can continuously do this.
Yeah.
So that's investigate signals. No prisoners. So classic term, although it is quite different now. While this secondary mission is active, each time an enemy unit is destroyed, you score 2 victory points to a maximum of 5. So if you kill 3 units, you get 5 points. If you kill 2, you get 4 points. All right, and note that the victory points are scored even if such a unit is destroyed, and then it comes back.
Something that's important to note with this one as well is attached units and leaders. So when a rule comes into effect of destroying a unit and or an attached leader, they apply separately. So killing a unit that has an attached leader to it would actually be 2 units that you killed, because you kill 1 for the bodyguard unit and then 1 for the leader.
And then you start allocating to the leader, who's now a separate unit.
That's right. So it's very clear in the attached leaders section of the rules, but something to keep in mind when you're looking at these missions.
Definitely. So killing that 1 unit with the character inside and the unit, bam, all of a sudden you got 2 kills, and now you only need 1 other one instead of 2 other.
Yeah.
Extend battle lines. That was the name. It was literally called the mission battle lines. See, I knew I'd remember it. Thanks, secondary card.
How many people did you just Rolf stomp on that mission?
A lot of people. At the end of your turn, if you control 1 or more objective markers in your own deployment zone, and you also control 1 or more objective markers in no man's land, this secondary mission is achieved, and you score 5 victory points. This one's pretty tasty, honestly. Quite easy to hold your own. 1 objective in no man's land, 5 points. Heck yeah.
Now, this is a kind of mission where, even though you're not scoring primary for your home objective, you have to hold it to get these sort of points. Yep. So even though they might not be relevant in the primary mission game, some of these tactical missions do force you to use your home objective.
Control
so
your
they
home
are
and a different one.
Relatively important, especially like with that mission rule, where you got like a command point for holding your home objective. If it's not worth anything, that's fine. But if you don't hold it, you don't get a choice. You don't get a chance.
Literally, the next card is holding your home objective.
Nice.
So the other thing about extend battle lines is that if you only happen to have 1 unit remaining in your army, they thought of this scenario, then you can still do it. If that unit controls an objective in no man's land, you get 2 points.
Nice.
So like late game, if you have this and only 1 unit's alive, you just touch an objective in no man and you can get 2.
Yeah, that could be the difference between winning and losing a game, right?
Totally could be. Then defend stronghold at the end of your opponent's turn or at the end of the battle, whichever comes first. If you control 1 or more objective markers in your own deployment zone, then you get 3 points. And it cannot be achieved during the first battle round. If you draw it during the first battle round, you have to draw a new one, and you shuffle it back into your deck.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Of course, if your opponent's army is really fast and can like get behind your lines, you have to make sure you control your stuff better. If not,
it's just pretty easy points.
Yeah.
Overwhelming force. While this secondary mission is active, each time an enemy unit that started the turn within range of an objective marker is destroyed, you score 3 points to a maximum of 5. So if you kill 2, you get the max of 5. And note that victory points are scored even if that unit is destroyed and comes back. So just making sure that resurrection isn't preventing people from scoring points, because they're actually doing so.
I do like that they've kind of like built that into the cards.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
because it's such a feels bad where you kill it and they're like, all right, well, I come back on a 4-up, and they do it, and you're okay, well, great.
Yeah.
Secured no man's land. At the end of your turn, if you control 2 or more objective markers in no man's land, you score 5 victory points. Or if at the end of your turn you only control 1 objective marker in no man's land, you get 2 points instead of the 5. So another solid, just easy way. A lot of these ones interact with an objective in no man's land. Try and force you out
they
there.
kind of want you to play like in the middle of the board.
They really do. They want you to interact with your opponent. Area denial. At the end of your turn, if 1 or more units from your army, excluding battle shocked units, wholly within 6 of the center of the battlefield, and there are no enemy units within 6 of the center of the battlefield, then you get 5 points. If at the end of the turn there are 1 or more enemy units wholly within 6 of the center of the battlefield, but there are no enemy units within 3 of the center, then you get 3 victory points instead of 5. So if they're not literally right on top of the center, you still get a decent amount of points.
Yep.
And then attempting target. When this secondary mission card is drawn, your opponent must select 1 objective marker in no man's land. If at the end of the turn you control the selected objective marker, 5 victory points.
I can just think of like you drawing that on the last turn of that mission where there's only the Omega mission left and being like, well, I guess it's that one.
I better hold it, because it's a lot of points.
Yeah.
And then the last secondary is capture enemy outpost. If at the end of your turn you control 1 or more objective markers in your opponent's deployment zone, you get a cool 8 victory points. So
see, that's worth the points, like going to your
yeah,
opponent's
one
side.
of the harder ones to get, but
Yeah.
8 points, worth it. You probably want to finagle some sort of crazy play to do
Yeah.
it.
Well, there you have it. That's all the secondary missions.
Those are all the secondary missions. So now we will go ahead and talk about Gambits. So while you set that up, I can read how the Gambits work, and then we can kind of discuss overall what we think about Gambits.
Yeah. As you describe it, I will show you in real time how this works.
So there are 2 Gambit decks, 1 for each player, with identical cards. These contain challenging goals the player can attempt to achieve by the end of the battle, instead of attempting to score any more victory points from their primary mission. At the end of the 3rd battle round, before starting the next battle round, players can generate Gambits and choose whether they want to attempt to achieve one. So each player takes their Gambit deck, removes the Proceed as Planned card, placing it to one side before shuffling the remaining Gambit cards and discarding 1. Each player then adds their Proceed as Planned card back in to have a hand containing 3 cards. And then they
Totally messed that up.
players then secretly choose 1 of the 3 cards and place it face down on the battlefield. Once both players have done so, they end up revealing their choice.
My choice is delaying tactics.
Okay. So if the players reveal Proceed as Planned, if you want to show that one, this, and both players have all of these, they are not attempting a Gambit in this battle and continue to score victory points for achieving the goals as listed in the primary mission card. Otherwise, the player is attempting a Gambit, and until the end of the battle, that player cannot score any more victory points as described in their primary mission card, and any victory points scored thus far are kept. Instead, at the end of the battle, if they successfully completed the goal described on the Gambit card, they score victory points as detailed on that Gambit, and they are in fact wild.
They're
2 of
pretty
them,
crazy.
I believe, were previewed, but we can go through them again, and then one of them is brand new.
So procedures planned, basically, I'm not doing a Gambit. Now, it is supposed to be secret, so it is like at end of the 3rd battle round. You know, do you want to do it? Do you not? You know, that sort of thing.
If you're both kind of in a tight game back and forth, then it's probably going to be that you both proceed as planned and continue fighting out the battle.
Correct.
But if one person has a relatively big advantage, especially going into turns 4 and 5, this is where a Gambit is probably going
Well,
to
it's
play.
30 points if you do it. So in certain scenarios, like if you have played the primary, you've scored like 10 points or whatever, you know, and you're like, okay, well, turn 3, my opponent is clearly winning this. There's only a cap of 50 points. If I can do this, I get 30. The gap goes like this, and then you can try and get more of the secondary cards.
Yep.
Right? So let's go over the one that's probably like the least weird.
Interesting phrasing. Interesting phrasing.
Which is the orbital strike coordinates. So at the end of your 5th turn. Now, this is important to note. It's not end of the 5th battle round. It's end of the 5th turn. So the person who is going first has a higher likelihood of being able to succeed at these, right? If one or more units from your army that are not battle-shocked are wholly within 9 inches of a corner of the battlefield, kind of like that tactical secondary card.
Investigate signals.
Correct. And those units are not within your own deployment zone, roll a 2d6. So it's not in your own deployment zone and in the corners outside your deployment zone. Okay, fair enough. Add 1 to the result for every other corner of the battlefield that has 1 or more units from your army wholly within 9, excluding units that are battle-shocked or within engagement range of enemy units. Now, you could use your own table quarters for that, like in your deployment zone. If the final result is a 12 or more, this gambit is successful, and you get 30 points.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of the math. Like, mathematically, what's the best you could get? You get +1 for every other corner. So you'd have to have, you could get +3 to the roll. So the best you could roll is a 9. Mm-hmm. And now roll a 9
so
plus
all the corners
2d6.
on a 9, you just get 30
points.
30 points. Now, like it said, units can't be battle shocked, they can't be in engagement range, and your opponent is going to have a full... You announce this start of Battle Round 4, so they'll have a whole turn to interact and be like, I don't want you anywhere near the corners. I'm going to kill this stuff that's either going in the corners, I'm going to move block the corners,
right?
Or even just move blocking 1 makes it from a 9 to a 10.
Yep.
There's no reroll on this.
Hey, I'd bank on a 10 for 30 points any day.
Any day. Boxcars all day.
Yeah, so that's probably the simplest one, because the other two require what's called a distraction target or a evacuation target, which are like a bit of a weird sort of way of looking at it. So, in delaying tactics, your distraction target will be equal to half the number of enemy units that are within engagement range of 1 or more unit from your army rounding up. At the end of your 5th turn, if your distraction target is less than 4, it is increased to 4.
That's just the first part of it.
That's a mouthful. But essentially, it's equal to half the number of enemy units that were in engagement range of 1 or more units. So if I get 8 of your units into engagement range of me, this
is turn 5, by the way.
Yeah, then my evacuation target is 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Distraction target is 4. Sure. Fair enough. But if it's 7 or if it's 6, it's still 4. Because the minimum is 4.
Yeah.
At the end of your 5th turn, you roll 1d6 for each enemy unit that is within engagement range of 1 or more units from your army, and you add 1 to the result if that enemy unit is battle shocked, and subtract 1 if 1 or more of the units from your army that are in engagement range are battle shocked. Mm-hmm. On a 4+, that enemy unit has been successfully delayed. So I'm in range of you.
So you have to do this at least 4 times, right?
I have to do it at least 4 times.
You have to roll at least, at best case scenario, you're doing
4
it on
4s.
4 4s, but if you're +1 because they're battle shocked, then you do it on 3s.
3s.
But like we said, it's
so
tough.
Ideally, I would try and engage 8 of your units, which is like the to get to the minimum amount of delay.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to roll out of 8 rolls, 4 4s.
On average.
So on average, if you could do that, right, but you could do it with 4, right? And just roll 4 4s.
You could just be like me and just be like 4 4 4 4. No
right?
problem. 30 points. Give it to me. I'm out.
But that's what I mean. This one's like you have to look at the math. It's a little weird. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to that, and like understand what it's asking you to do.
These require you. These are like scenarios where you and your opponent still have a lot of units left towards the end of the game. So this is not a bloody game where you're really.
You're not going to do this if your opponent only has like 3 units left because you can't physically roll that 4th 4 that you need.
And once again, you're doing a gambit because you're down, and usually your opponent has more resources.
And it's the end of your turn, so if your opponent gets to attack you back and kills your units,
or if you get battle shocked and then you're -1 to the roll,
right, or something, you know, it's just not going to work. And last but not least, you have the emergency evacuation. So in this case, you have to determine an evacuation target. And this one is half the number of your units from your army that are on the battlefield, rounding up. So in this case, 7 is 8 or whatever, but it's half. So 8 units that you have on the battlefield would be 4. That would be like the minimum that you need. Including units that are embarked on transports. So that's kind of cool. So at the end of the 5th turn, roll 1d6 for each unit from your army that is wholly within 6 inches of the center of the table.
How many units can you fit in 6 of the center?
Remember, you need a minimum of 4 for your evacuation target. So if you have 8 units, you have a high likelihood of this happening, including stuff in a transport, right? Because a transport would be 2 units, right? Yeah. Or, whatever it is. The same thing, you subtract 1 if your unit is battle shocked. But you roll for each unit within 6 or wholly within 6. On a 4+, they're marked for evacuation. And if you successfully roll a minimum of 4 4+,
you get your 30 points.
You get your 30 points.
So I know people made a huge deal about this as a mechanic. I personally am very rarely going to go for this. It'd be like a teams event where I'm behind, but by getting this off, pulling this off, I could just completely swing the entire round. Maybe I'll do it there. Or if this is like a knockout round tournament and I'm losing the game, not going to be able to pull it back, even with some tricky plays. Let's just try it.
Yeah. I think, if anything, the easiest one to do, or that gives you a chance, is the orbital strike coordinates.
Yeah, it's controlling space on the board.
You randomly discard one of the 3.
Yeah,
so you 1 in 3 chance that one's not going to be in your hand.
Yeah, when you try it, because then you pick them randomly and you're like, oh god, no, I discarded the one that's like the one I would bank on.
Right.
The 9.
So, okay, it's interesting. Out of those, either you try and get into your opponent's face, or you try and hide your units and just jump into the middle of the board at the end of the 5th turn and just try and roll 4s.
Yeah, it's like an army that has just tons of maybe Drukhari with tons of cheap transports. They can try it, but it's wholly within 6. Like, how many
I don't know.
How many units are you realistic?
Just tuck them in.
Imagine turn 4, your opponent just advances a big block of infantry in the center, like move blocked.
Yep,
you can't get there.
It's like a monolith in the middle of the board. Good luck.
And by the way, you're giving up your turn 4 primary and any turn 4 primary mission stuff. This is just you're trying to score the 30 points.
Yep. So it is, but it is a gambit. By its sense, I feel like a lot of folks who just play the game casually, right? It gives you, if you're losing that primary game, you can just go, let's see what happens, and keep you playing until that 5th turn.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Realistically, Orbital Strike is the one that you would pick if you could just pick from any of them. But like Scary said, if you randomly discard that one, you're like, okay, well, probably not getting these 30 points. We might as well shake right here.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think in tournaments this is going to be seen too often, but I did mention scenarios where it might.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think that was a good overview of old and new missions and things like that as well, which is massively important. So do let us know, which one do you think is the craziest, and which one did you think you enjoyed the most of all the missions or the gambits and things like that as well?
What are you feeling? What do you think? Are you going to go for fixed missions? Are you going to go for tactical? Just to clarify once again, when you discard at the end of your turn, when you're playing tactical, you do gain a CP. So there's nice CP regen mechanic built into it. So it has that advantage. You can also get those extra bonus points. So I think they balance them fairly well, honestly.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. I think certain armies can do fixed better because they're just a fast army that has stuff in reserve and it's going to be able to score things like engage
or even if you do cleanse. And the fact that you know the primary before you pick your secondary missions means that if there are objectives in the middle, because sometimes there's not, you could be like, I need this fixed and this fixed, or I have a big block like 50 Terminators or whatever. You'd be like, I'm going to go to these objectives and just do an action on each one, and you can't stop me every turn.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, I think they're relatively balanced, honestly. I'm leaning towards trying tactical a bit more just to get some experience with it since I haven't played Maelstrom since 8th. But hopefully everybody's excited about these new missions. Thank you so much for joining us. If you, like I said, please leave a comment telling us what you think of the new missions and what the highlights were. And on top of that, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about it. We're going to be doing tons of in-depth content on YouTube and in the War Room on everything related to 10th edition, the core rules, the missions, plenty more to come. So please check out the description below, thewarroom.vhx.tv. There's already a ton of 10th edition content in there, and a lot of the advanced stuff is going to be coming in future weeks. So please look forward to that. Thank you so much for joining us. really hope you are enjoying the 10th edition previews from Games Workshop, ourselves, and many other content creators. It's just a really exciting time to be in the Warhammer community, and we just really appreciate your support. There's a couple super chats I want to answer before we leave, but just thanking everybody in general. So we got Mr. W. Sleppy, $5 super chat. Leviathan decks, mission decks, whatever they call it, we will bring death to the false emperor either way. Somebody is a fan of chaos. Somebody call the Inquisition. Then we've got Zlack Onion here, member for 17 months. Scary, what's your favorite Flash Gits memory? I didn't play against a single Flash Gits in 9th edition, to be clear.
Like Flash Gits is in the channel Flash Gits?
No, Flash Gits, the unit,
yeah.
the orc unit.
Actually, my favorite Flash Gits memory of the unit was one time where I was playing against orcs, and I think that unit shot me like 3 times back to back to back, and blew up like 4 raiders, and killed like a bunch of witches. And it was just bad. It was bad for me.
There was another game, maybe it was against Nick or somebody, where I think it was Steve Pamprine's orcs popped off of Flash Gits.
Oh, that's
Could be
right.
misremembering that, but...
He loved those, didn't he?
Yeah.
He used to run them all the time.
And then we got Matto with a $5 super chat. Rip to raise the banners high in R&D. I don't know what the third secondary to take served us well. They did. This is going to shake up the secondary game, and it's definitely going to impact list design, so I'm excited for seeing that in the future as well.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your support. Thank you to John McCardell for those 50 gifted subs. If you were one of those people who was gifted a sub, make sure you accept it so you get access to some of our War Room content on YouTube. All right. Thank you very much. We'll see everybody very soon for plenty more. So long for now.